standard disclaimers. One, we are not speaking for the order, we're speaking as ourselves. So don't think that what we say is what the whole order thinks. I need to say that disclaimer because somebody actually got in trouble in another kingdom for not saying that first.
The Laurel Circle thinks the circle doesn't have one brain.
Yes,
right.
The Laurel Circle, what we say is not what the Laurel Circle thinks. What we say is what this Laurel thinks. Two, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of individuals and talking about specific people. We will talk about specific items regarding people in general, but we're not going to be like, oh, what we were saying about Ulrich was this, because that's just not going to happen.
But it would be a large book.
Yeah, but they'd have to be all over 18 or 20.
Oh, it would also need to be heavily expurgated, but that's another story entirely.
Yeah, that too. So those are the two main topics. Otherwise, if you have questions and stuff like that, my hope here is we talk about kind of as Laurels, what we're looking for in people when we're talking about artisans and stuff like that. Did you want to sit up here, Martha? You're welcome to join us.
We have Laurels back here as well.
You don't have to. You can sit up there and heckle. You can sit up here and sit up here. You can sit up here.
I'm good at I'm good at
The point here is not to be a big formal us versus them kind of a thing, and I'll get to that when I talk about great things. But the focus here is to just kind of answer questions and stuff like that. So I'm going to kick it off by answering the question that everybody asks as, why do you say that phrase? That is the worst phrase you can say to a non-peer, which is, just keep doing what you're doing.
I might remember an apprentice telling you to never say that again.
And then I explained why. All right. So why do I use that phrase? Why do peers use that phrase? Okay. Why is it a horrible phrase, but it's actually just misunderstood? Okay.
My biggest issue with is the fact that when they actually elevate you to the order of Laurel, generally speaking, it is because you have shown some prowess or excellence in a particular, or maybe even a couple of particular areas of endeavor, right? So now you're sitting there, whether it's in a competition, an exhibition, or just talking with somebody who you happen to meet on a dusty path at one of our events, and they want to talk to you a little bit about what they're doing, what they're, and what they're trying to accomplish, which has absolutely nothing to do with your area of expertise. Okay, you are attempting to achieve, or maybe I achieved mastery in underwater Bohemian basketball. Okay, and they're working on armor smithing or beer. Okay, well I know a lot about beer, I just don't know how to make it. Okay, but the problem that you run into there is that, so what do you tell them to guide them? The bailout phrase is to just keep on doing what you're doing, which is a terrible phrase. In business, okay, we are specifically told as people managers in my organization that any guidance, any development guidance that you give somebody needs to be specific, measurable, to some level achievable, realistic, and ideally, if you know the person well enough, should also be kind of time-bound. Try and hit this goal by that date.
That would be smart. It's a smart goal.
That's exactly right. So apparently, other people have taken the same management class. Okay?
Or they have common sense.
All right. So let me speak why I don't hate that phrase. Because let's take it back. How long have we known each other?
A while.
Okay. How many of the 20 years we've known each other? It's called 20 years.
Yeah, sure.
How many hours of that time have we spent sitting together, me watching you work?
Not as much as I'd like. Only a few.
So
That's a great answer.
So how do I know what you're doing? Because I need to see you doing your thing. So if you keep doing it, then I can take the time to pay attention to what you're doing. Because while I see your stuff, I'm not focusing on it from the angle of evaluating it. There's a difference between appreciating it and evaluating it. So now that I'm evaluating what you're doing, I need to keep seeing you do it so I can evaluate it.
Okay.
Okay? So if you keep doing it, then I can keep seeing it and do a better job of evaluating the work you're doing, the breadth of work you're doing, the body of work you're doing. So it is just keep doing what you're doing so I can see more of it. And because I've known a lot of people in here for decades, but how much of that time is actually spent interacting about your art? And I need to make the effort to come see your art, but you need to keep doing that art. And that is why I don't hate the phrase.
And
See, this is where me and you were going to differ.
Yeah, I know.
Because I hate that phrase.
He's an educator, right?
As an elementary school teacher, and actually as his apprentice, you should see the emails that went back and forth about this phrase. But I hate that phrase because I would rather someone tell me, it's not that you need to make a change right now. You need to continue working on what you're working before you're ready for the next step. Because that is a much better guiding tool to me than that. And if it is because they're not seeing me do it, I would rather them say, you know what, before I answer that, I would like to schedule some time to sit down with you and watch you do some art.
That does require effort on
that requires effort. So I say, my advice to all of you is never let Braden get away with that phrase.
It's a first step phrase, and then we explain.
So I can give a little bit of a more follow up on that one.
It's like the same message. Keep doing your thing. Let us see what you're doing.
But one of these doesn't make you want to stab them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Not the
Everything Elias says makes me want
You're
to stab
saying
him.
there's more to the sentence. You're saying, let's change the sentence.
Change the sentence.
So I don't usually say just that because that's not enough for people to go on. But here's some additional things. If somebody says this to you and you don't think that now's the right time to stab that person, never the right time to stab that person. Here's some things that either we could say more or you could understand as some of what we're looking at. Yes, one is visibility. And not everybody wants to go and do art in the middle of the social hall where everybody can see them. Some art doesn't transport well. Some people just aren't that sort of person. But of course, there's an element where we still need to see that. But a couple things that you can take from that. One, I have made a shoe. That is a lie. I've never made a shoe. But pretend for a moment that I've made a shoe. I have made one shoe. That shoe probably sucks. Right? One shoe sucks. Second shoe. I made a second shoe. Probably the mirror to the first shoe. Slightly less sucky. When do I get to erase the word sucky or put an actual negative on it? Keep doing it. I have learned, the first one I probably learned really well how to not make a shoe.
Right.
So all art requires depth. So when we say, if somebody were to say keep doing what you're doing, one of the things we definitely mean by that is never stop at 1. I recommend not stopping before 3. 3 is the point in time where you should have gotten all the basic mistakes out of the way and be able to not master, but have solid grasp of the basic skill set required for a thing. Or
you've decided this isn't the thing you want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay?
But you also learned a lot of how not to do that.
Exactly.
Give advice on what not to do.
Right, the Thomas Edison answer? Who here is not familiar with the Thomas
I learned
Edison
many
answer?
ways not to make a
How
light bulb.
not to make a light bulb.
I learned how to not make a spoon.
Right.
But then you did make a spoon.
And then I took that and learned how to make a spoon.
Let me pause for a second. Let's do introductions. Elias, why don't you start with name, where you're from, and kind of pick an area of expertise you'd like to share.
My name is Elias. I am from Laurels.
Oh, no, it's longer than that. Try again.
Elias is fine.
Elias is good.
Oh, okay, fine. We're going to be informal.
He's okay.
I'm sorry. For Ulrich, I am Master Elias. I'm Master of the Laurel, Master of Defense. Okay, Elias Tagar. I'm from Laurels. I was Braden's apprentice, so.
Despite that, you still got to be a little.
And my areas of expertise are pottery and sword fighting.
I'm Mistress Juliana from Arnhold, and primarily pewter casting, but then also a bunch of weaving and additional whatnot. Though at the time I was elevated, there are those who would argue that I was a CNI Laurel, but I pretty much stopped CNI right after that, so we're not able to do that.
You can do CNI.
Darren James or Keller.
Define CNI.
Calligraphy and illumination.
Right.
Thank you. She asked me and I was like, I don't know.
Darren James or McKellar, bagpiper.
From? What group were you from, James?
Let's see here. Where am I from? Primarily, principally, Logs Allen, formerly of Aitenveld and Sundragon.
Whatever, you still play the list.
And matter of fact, yeah, when we were down in
Two-time
Aitenveld, we didn't
Logs
spend a lot of time playing down there. It's a very different game down there. I'm going to get on my soapbox for 30 seconds.
You are recording.
Yeah, I understand that. You don't realize how special you have it here in Artemisia. This is the way the game was played 25 years ago, and all I can say is keep doing it.
I'm Braden, typically Karl von Zobenheim. Braden, from Arnold, and music, singing and playing, and having quite extensive library stuff. And since then I've added on fletching and black work and cooking and more cooking. Preserved meats is my latest find there. And what else do I do? Just stuff. I make hats occasionally.
I am Master Sir Marcello, here from locally here in Stonegate, and I guess if I had to pick anything, I would say brewing and cooking, particularly Middle Eastern cooking.
I'm Mr. Savannah, formerly of the Amber, CNI, mostly I love illumination, and just kind of picking it up again.
I'm happy to see your eye anytime.
Oh, I've got some eyes. I have eyes. But yes, so we're moving forward with that. So I am learning some more of the traditions that are particular to my new and wonderful kingdom, Artemisia, because things are a little bit different everywhere. So I'll kind of segue into that phrase. I don't use that phrase.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Keep doing what you're doing. I just don't use it.
Okay.
Everyone's too individual for that. Yeah. So.
Yes, I know her imminence will be stepping up there.
Yep, in November. Would love to see you all at Romeo's birthday. And 1,000 eyes.
Okay. Thank you guys. I just want to make sure everyone knew who we were. All right. So I think
Do you have want to field questions, or that was a good opening?
I mean, otherwise I've got other pieces we can launch into. Unless everyone's got something specific they want to toss up here. Softballs, hardballs, fastballs, curveballs.
Strong.
You want screwballs?
Is this live on Facebook?
Yes.
Hi, Facebook. If you guys have any questions, no one's looking at this screen, but someone could be. So.
All right, Stefan, have a question?
I've heard plenty of times that being a peer is a job, and it's not something to aspire to for, like winning a contest.
Not a prize.
Yeah, that. So I'd like to know the contrasting thing. What do you get out of it? Why do you want to be a peer? Why do you want to be a Laurel?
Great question.
I feel like when Brandon and I ran for Baron and Baroness, we stood in line for Harry Potter books for 2 hours and rehearsed some questions that we might be asked. Why do you want to run for Baron and Baroness? Which is a similar sort of role. You're very much in this leadership role. And I was like, and if you answer, it's my turn to give back. You gotta have better. And so we kind of talked about it. I myself really find that there's a lot of enjoyment in enabling other people's fun. I like teaching, and not just teaching, but teaching and seeing that spark fan into a flame and grow, hopefully even brighter than whatever it was. Like, I've totally taught classes that I'm like, I don't really care, but here's a new thing that I haven't seen here, so teach that. And then somebody takes it and runs with it, and that's perfect. I'm happy when other people get better than me. In terms of being an artisan, there's a lot of things to get back out of it. But in terms of being a peer, I am a manager type person. So I'm a project manager and all that sort of thing. So there's nothing out of my comfort zone to make sure things move forward smoothly, to help enable other people to grow. It's an ownership, and that's something I enjoy. General enjoyment, I guess I get offered chocolate before maybe a person who somebody doesn't know.
Chocolate's a good thing. I'll expand on it. The inspiring others and seeing, giving people a starting place and watching them take it. Once upon a time, Varia and I taught a hands-on class on how to make shoes at Uprising.
That was fun.
And then somebody turned around and made shoes for Aftershire. And Timmer. And that was a huge success and a big feel-good moment for me, because I inspired somebody to take an art and run with it and do more and make more of the SCA. When I taught my period table settings class and watching people go, I can do that. I can create more of an authentic atmosphere, knowing more and taking this and running with it. I love teaching those classes where people then learn more about how things work and then bring it forth so that they can share it with other people as well.
You say, what's the prize of it? Why would you want to do that?
Why would you want this?
The reason, so you do get it for doing what you were doing. But when you get elevated, you now have a platform where people take you more seriously for what you were doing anyway. So it's kind of an enabling device for me to do exactly what I was doing anyway, but now I've got things. So I do have to be more careful with my word. There are some things you have guidelines now, but it enables me to do more for other people, doing what I was doing before. So the prize is you get to go to meetings. And
That's the prize.
so take it as
I think that's sarcasm.
to know that you have the backing of people you have respected, that's empowering.
That does sound
And and you feel like you were doing it right. That feels good. So
And to expand on it just a little bit, you don't get to, not only do you influence individuals, but you also get to influence the direction of the arts community and the kingdom in general. That's awesome. You know, if you want to see more of something, it's easier to do as a peer.
It's a better profile. Although sometimes I wonder how much people take me seriously when I'm wearing a giant phallic symbol on my head, but
It's not. Does anybody understand what this is?
you
You do. I know you do. You do.
Yes, Jermaine.
Comment from Mistress Fia. She says it's an opportunity to help shape the future of artistry in our kingdom.
Yes. Thank you, Fia.
Cass?
When I became a Laurel, I had no idea of the flip side. I had the goal of becoming a Laurel. I wanted to be recognized by people who I respected for my contributions to this society. As I grew into my role as a Laurel, I ended up finding out that I learned more from my students than I learned by myself. And then sharing it with people, and again, seeing that I was able to inspire somebody to do something and help them on their way in this organization. So when I was sitting in your spot, looking at becoming a Laurel, I had no idea of the flip side. And yes, it is like a job, quote, responsibility, but you don't have to have that immediately. We encourage people who want to be Laurels to teach. And maybe some of those who have more common sense than I get that. It took me longer, but we all have our own pathways, and just because somebody else's path is different than mine does not make it wrong. Different is the word.
I got an interesting dual-edged sword that I really recognized when I got tapped as a Laurel. And you'll hear this other thing. We don't create Laurels, we recognize them. So, people who are putting that energy back in, that sort of thing. Like, we wouldn't expect to make a Laurel, and then suddenly they turn around and act like a peer. We see people who are doing things, and that's the pool that, would be looked at. But I found specifically with regards to casting, right? When I taught my first casting class when I was Lady Jillian. Super intro, blah, 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 and people argued with me. God bless them, everybody's got different experiences, and this is my first class. Now, right after that, I got my grant, and people stopped arguing with me, even though I'm saying the same things, and we have the same type of students. of people who know me, they're like, such and such was not in period because Mr. Giuliani told me so. And also it's found in the book, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I need you all. But, okay. But anyway, so you get less argument, you get more, they know what they're talking about, so I'll just take that as good. But then there's a notice of backing up what you say with that documentation, because I, for one, don't want to be the person who maybe said something offhand, and it was, and then people are quoting that because Mr. Giuliani said so. So I try to only say in a public forum what I can document, or have secret caveats around it.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys.
I have no doubt, though, it is a responsibility in the job. And just because you love art doesn't mean this path necessarily is for you, just because it's an art club. There's more to it. There's so much more to it.
Let me postulate something here, okay? I got my laurel for bagpiping, okay? And I'd like to point out, I got my laurel for Victorian bagpiping. Right? My bagpipes didn't come into existence until 1720.
Well,
so,
it was Victoria.
Well,
Womp womp womp.
all right. I love it, okay? I enjoy doing it. And people watch me on my path. In 1993, I started playing the bagpipes, and I played them very poorly, right? And unfortunately, the bagpipe is not an instrument that is subtle. Right? I can't take it into a corner and do my thing and, not infect most of the neighborhood or the site that I'm on, right? But eventually I got to actually, no. Here's what it really is. It's a great way to receive all kinds of grilled cutlery, okay? But over time, I began to become proficient, and I am a self-taught bagpiper, which is the worst kind. You know, the saying in Scotland, he who has a fool for a master, he who teaches himself has a fool for a master, okay? Because there was nobody else to learn from in this kingdom with regards to bagpiping. The only guy that could have moved out, he volunteered back in 1985. All right? And so the question then becomes, do I need that laurel in order to receive affirmation? I'm clearly the preeminent bagpiper in the kingdom. Right? I was the only bagpiper in the kingdom for a number of years. Right? So for me, when I got tapped, as she puts it, to receive my laurel, I was actually flabbergasted and dumbfounded, because I realized, oh, what does that mean? Okay, so on the one side, all right, they're clearly saying, you know what, you've done good. And that applause refreshes, it motivates, right? It makes you want to aspire to do more, right? All of a sudden, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I better actually start getting off my handy and learning about the what-not aspect of that training. What about the languages? Okay. 47 different kinds of bagpipes. Okay. Different techniques for playing them. Different scales, although almost all pentatonic. I had real problems with when I was elevated Laurel. I was elevated Laurel in 96. Okay? And it wasn't until about 3 years later, when we were over at Tribune on Yesu's place, and they pulled out a woodcut drawing that Albrecht Dürer had done back about 1549 of a bagpiper, Dudelsack piper, the Germans. And they said, well, what do you think of this? And I know this is a loaded question. I said, that's an outstanding drawing. It's taken, it's done magnificent work here, but the bagpiper is holding is wrong. Okay? Thinking you've got the wrong hand caught, which means the sack wants to fall out from underneath your arm. He said, that's why you got the wrong. Okay? Right. So, for me, it was an unintended consequence of a passion in an art. And I think that I would argue very strongly, okay, that you should seek out whether or not that is something you really want to elevate. If you're doing something because you love doing it in the SCA, odds are good you will eventually be recognized for it. The question is, are you prepared to accept the responsibility of the position, right? Because the moment I got Laurel, all of a sudden I was being invited to participate in judging competitions. I was judging clothing, I was judging calligraphy, I was judging performance art. Performance arts was the only one I felt even close to uniquely qualified to do. Okay, and I'm telling you now, some serious insecurity there. right? Something to watch out for. Because all of a sudden you come along and they think that they open up your skull, they pump a bunch of information in there and then put it back there.
He's lying to you. That actually totally happens. When they whack you with that sword or the scepter, like it's a knowledge transfer. It's amazing.
Do they still whack people with that?
It happened to me.
Maybe they can use the right sword for you.
Some people that whack them a little harder than others.
He could be pointing at you or me or. So I have a question that would be, I think, an interesting one. Outside of artistic prowess, which is, of course, what Laurels are for, right? Outside of artistic prowess, what is the most important characteristic that each of us looks for in the populace to consider or not consider?
Wow, 3 rabbis, 5 opinions. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Oh, and I expect everybody's going to have a different opinion, and I think a lot of those opinions are going to come from themselves. I'll start real quick just to illustrate that. Mine would actually be kindness. I find that kindness, the ability to build up or at least let down gently, to interact nicely with others, not be abrasive, is ones that I look for a lot. Totally irrelevant, any artistic prowess whatsoever. And that comes because I find myself hyper-aware of interactions between people, between myself and other people, and so that's something I value in myself, and therefore that's something I value in other people, which then sets the stage for everybody having wildly different answers in this sort of.
I have 2, and they're kind of related. One of them is maturity, and that's tied in with common sense.
Well, now you're thinking.
What?
Common sense might be a little easy.
Are you talking about purity?
Does this person react as a mature adult? Not every time, because Lord knows I react from my gut level when somebody takes my space or whatever. But does this person know enough to know right from wrong, kindness from unkindness? That to me is a very important quality.
I like the survey that my litmus test, but the ladies have already said is true. I would like to think that up here is someone that if we have a newcomer at their first event, would you feel comfortable introducing that newcomer to this person, saying this is a master slash mistress of that thing, and leave that with us?
Braden has a word for this. Yeah, absolutely.
So franchise, so you talk about the different Chivalry versions. In franchise, it was like, oh, it's so hard to define franchise. And my definition for franchise, with an example, is that when everything's going badly, you're still acting with the nobility.
What's your bearing?
What's your bearing? Are you being noble despite whatever else is going on? And my example is there we are. I have an elephant scroll for the king, which is surprise custom. It is hand carved on slate, big size. Hand carved at story. And walking to court, my feet flip out. One piece, land it, run it, breaks in 3 pieces. And 2 brand new players come up to me and say, can you help? My first reaction, my brain is, I just came out of this case correct.
You better climb back up that mountain.
These 2 players, I can destroy their dream and they will never go to the bed again. Or I can be the peer that I need to be and thank them so much. And that's what I did. As I sat there with 3 pieces of slate that was hand-carved pelican scroll, and I said, I appreciate it, sir, and thank you so much. No, we can't really do it. It's rock, and so we'll come up with a better plan, but thank you for your time.
Make a whole new.
And so then we got the pieces to court. I went back to my tent,
There was a whole story about
Was it a Moses thing?
It's framed on the wall, like crying out for this scroll ended up probably even a little bit cooler than it would have been otherwise. But there was no way. Oh, there was crying. But there was no way to know what the future held at that moment.
But yeah, it ended up being a really cool changing of the ceremony where people brought in, as they're speaking about it, in a section of the scroll. So it all came together in. But actually, it was a cool thing. It was not a cool thing.
The number one skill for sitting up there on the thrones, by the way, and there's no litmus test for this in Crown Tournament. Rolling with it. We're gotta roll with it.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, we preach out of sheep rising, didn't we?
All right, so believe it or not, the two Laurels are actually going to agree. The first word that popped in my mind is kindness. I think that's one of the most important things. As I sat here and I thought, oh, I can't be cheesy and just answer the same thing. No, two other ones popped up. One, responsible. As an artist, you're going to have deadlines. You're going to have pieces, scrolls that have to be turned in to their majesties. You're going to have an article of clothing that you're making for someone's elevation. As a potter, you're going to have, I've had plenty of those sort of things. And sometimes things do go wrong. But part of that responsibility is like owning up to it, contacting them and going, okay, so I just broke it. I just broke that scroll. or whatever. And that's okay on occasion. But for the most part, like you can live within those deadlines. I think you're responsible. Also, inspiring. Inspiring. I'm sorry, you're here, and if you have a passion, I have a passion for pottery. And no, pottery is not going to be everybody's thing, okay? But when I'm talking about pottery, you should at least get that I love it, and that I enjoy it, and that I am passionate about it. That doesn't mean you have to, but you should at least see that passion in me. And I think it goes for me in all the peerages. I mean, I want to see the same thing when they make a new knight. I want to see that. I don't want to see that guy getting knighted who just seems to have been going through the phases of practicing class naps and whatever. You want to see the one that's just passionate about fighting, right? Same thing with the other orders. That's one of the biggest things.
And to build on something you just said, it goes beyond. That's why I said outside of our artistic prowess, all those things go beyond that. Just as an example, if I were autocrating an event and now things happen, it's good to have backup plans, by the way. I recommend having your co-steward not live in the same house as you, because if something happens to you, chances are it happened to them too. But if you phone it in or just evaporate, did that have anything to do with art? No. Does it translate over? It does. So that it goes well beyond arts and sciences. Well beyond arts and sciences. These qualities.
Can I share something real quick? Go ahead. Okay. I'll never make it quick. I'm not known for my brother. To me, first of all, to aspire to be a Laurel, or a peer of any kind, but particularly Laurel, I think is a wonderful thing to have in your tool set. You should want to aspire. You should eventually want to achieve some level of mastery that is so overwhelming that people recognize it and they say, you got to have it in the north. But with that comes burdens and responsibilities. Because now you are an acknowledged master or mistress of at least an art. I would therefore say that the word service is tightly coupled to any peerage. We think of that generally with pelicans, right? But Laurels are just as much pelicans as pelicans are. They just, the nature of their service is a little bit different, right? Okay, so by service, I mean you're also working in your group, okay? Maybe in the Ministry of Arts and Sciences, showing up to arts and sciences competitions. Now, I'm well known on record for not being a big fan of arts and sciences competitions, largely because I think we struggle sometimes with how to provide constructive comments that don't injure the person. I actually taught science classes back in 1997 and 2003 in the University of Long Island. But, okay, arts and sciences exhibitions, I try to attend quite a few of those, right? Because part of that service is to encourage other people in their art to give them that motivation. Say, yep, you know, I can do this, you can do this too. All you have to have is passion, and it needs to relate somehow to our society. Okay, so for me, it's service, always constantly on the eye out there. The things, the little things you do, have to be big, but they do need to be there. So there is a responsibility to aspiring to be a peer, and that shouldn't scare anybody away. It should be motivating and enabling.
Related to that, I recently joined a Facebook group called 100 Days of SDA Service, and a lot of the people on there are making largesse. It's like 10 minutes of service every day for 100 days, and a lot of people are just like, I worked on the largesse, I worked on the largesse, over and over and over.
Rachel's doing that right now with the Needleworkers Guild in Loxallen. She's probably produced 10 or 12 items for the largest kitty, both for the kingdom as well as for the Barony recently. And my problem is that the majority of the skills that I have are not easily transportable to get there. Otherwise, I would definitely be doing that. The one thing I'm struggling with, I'm actually not a bad illuminator. The problem is I've had a tremendous amount of arthritis in my right hand, and so that's making that art a little harder to practice at this point. I'm probably going to have this thing all cut up here and not do this in future, because this is pretty much a blinding pain. I love doing illumination. It is one of the things I'm passionate about. I've made a number of nice scrolls.
You got another hand there. I need to learn how to draw with that one.
I'll bet I would really be frustrated with that idea.
Imagine it's awesome.
I'll speak to some of that.
It is frustrating trying to learn your art with a different hand.
They're applicable to all peerages. Just what your area of prowess is will determine what peerage is best for you. If your prowess is in rapier, then there's a peerage for you. If your prowess is in service and making things happen, there's a peerage for that. If your prowess is in making stuff, there's a peerage for that too. But I think the most key thing in being a peer is having leadership, but the perseverance. Because none of us came out of it being amazing at whatever we're doing. As you said, you started out being not the best banker.
Oh no, I was possibly the worst.
You're the best in this kingdom. First in class.
I'm going to tell you that, yeah, right. Okay, but when I first started out in 1993, that was a mighty, mighty roll bar.
It's okay, I remember.
But if you think about it, all of us have started from a little bit of talent, hopefully, maybe, and worked at it, and worked on it, and picked something, and had setbacks of all kinds. Some of it was external setbacks, some of it was internal setbacks, and kept going at it until we were accomplished. And that perseverance, say, I'm fine with this, but I'm going to move on to something else, because I'm not going to be the best at that. You know what?
15 minutes.
I've done so many, I knew how to play music, and now I go, hold on.
When I made a Laurel, which is like casting was my elevated tap, casting was my key thing, and even now casting is my key thing. But I'm always trying to take a look at like what can I do differently? What can I do that is more complex, more interesting, more period? All these things are true, but like in period they did a lot more than just a flat disc with a picture on it. Like so, if somebody asks me to do a flat disc with a picture on it, I will do that. But I would much rather be asked to do some elaborate, crazy brooch, to figure out how to incorporate some new element, to do something new, because otherwise I would rather go to one of my students and say, give them the opportunity to do a flat disc with a picture on it.
Hey, Juliana, what's the site token for 1347?
Indeterminate, but the fundraiser is a fork and spoon with skull knots on it.
Skull knobs?
Yeah, skull knots.
The top of the spoon is the little thing on top. This one.
The pommel?
Something new is scary in the sense that people know that I'm Laurel. So I am doing this cover with cold work, and it's okay. It's doing fantastic, but I know that should not limit me in trying something, and I don't have to be an expert the first time, or the second time, or the third time. Now, by the third time, like now I think I don't ever have to take that. But I am not an expert at everything, even though I have the title Laurel. And so I can fail. And often it's through failing that we learn more than succeed.
You always learn from failure. Well, okay. Your opportunities for learning are generally from failure. Once you become successful at something, and Knights know this in particular, okay, is that once you have become masterful, your learning progression really slows down, right? Until you run into somebody better or different, right? And then you have to change your paradigm, right? So failure is always opportunity. What other questions are out there?
Nope, nothing on Facebook.
Okay, so Elias is a master of defense. So
He is?
yes, I know,
What?
right? Elias, you want to show her the little?
Oh, okay.
See that?
Yeah.
And may I go on?
Please.
There was. So when he's looking for something in a fighter, there's a pretty easy path of what he's looking for. So when you're a Laurel at a competition, looking at an object someone's made, and you know nothing about it, how do you judge that?
I want to shot at this one. All right, so you heard me. Get around the head here. For instance, you get on the head here, but let me point out this. Okay, you heard me earlier use the acronym WAPA about the Middle Ages, right? So it's one thing to be really, really super good at a particular art, right? There are magnificent artists of unparalleled expertise throughout this world we live in. But the only ones that get to be Laurels are the ones that do artwork that has some relevance to our society. Right? Documentation is the number one key. I can't
Document or die.
times where I've been in an arts and science and judging competition where that person's documentation was what told me, A, what it was, right, that they were studying. Number two, what they believed through their research, that this is the way this thing was crafted, made, done, whatever, okay? And then, nicely, the doctor says, and this is how I went about it. And then finally, for extra credit, these are the things I couldn't do with the particular equipment that I had or whatever. For example, I didn't use period pigments on the scroll because they're lethal and I've got 3-year-old children in the house, right? Kind of
Because lead paint will kill you.
Don't let it scroll, right? Okay, so I will tell you right now, for me, it's all about the WATMA, and the WATMA comes the documentation.
So while we've got some revamping going on in the arts and sciences, and I'd love to have your feedback even if you can't come to my class, and documentation is de-emphasized scoring-wise, because I spent a year working on this thing, but you're telling me that a 20% of my grade is this paper, right? But it's so important. It's de-emphasized, but it's still 100% required. And there's a rubric for what we're looking for. It's everything you just said, because unless you're entering something that is casting, unless you're entering casting, like I may not know. And even if you are entering casting, I want to know that you know. And I'm certainly not going to lick your metal to decide whether or not you put lead in there. One, that doesn't work. And two, no thank you. But anyway, so let's say I am judging something, and I've got some basic information from the documentation, and not an expert in that case. So what could I say? So for starters, and this goes into a lot of the things you were referencing. One, I try to make sure and build it up. A lot of the things we're encouraging with the comments, with this new one, is one, don't use the comments to justify your score. I knocked you down because you didn't use linen thread. You did it wrong, stab, right? Next time, consider using linen thread. Same statement, turn it around. One's encouraging, one of them is punched in the face. I'm really just taking it out on Elias here. Let's say let's say I don't know what to say for the next thing, and usually you can kind of come up with something, some sort of like, like maybe the balance, or like the joint, some basic stuff. Just generally, you can kind of talk about overall just some open-ended questions. How was this item used, or did they do this? I don't know. Did they do this? So maybe some initial questions to think about. Of course, they'd rather have next step guidance from an expert judge. Can't always get expert judges.
We're not the 4-H.
We're not the 4-H.
What?
Actually, no, I've taken 2 classes.
Barry has entered the room.
And, by the way, when I started entering casting items in arts and sciences competitions, there are a lot of people like, I can't judge this. I don't know how to judge this. That's another reason. Teach a class to get that spark into other people. But you know what? If I can't get that spark in your eyes, you'll have learned enough to judge my stuff.
I think that's one of the important things when you don't know something about something that you're judging, and why I like to talk to people. Can you
she's right behind me.
Can you teach me about it? Do you love it enough? Do you know enough about it that you can teach me what there is?
Okay.
Because I can glean from you what you learned. Where did you get it from? I'm not trying to challenge you. I'm just trying to see what it is that you learned when you did this project, or what you love about it, because that comes through, and it's one of the things that we were talking about. If you love something, it shines out. Everybody sees that, and they think, I want to try that. He loves it so much. I want to try that. And that's, I think, if you're really doing something you love, you will research it. You will know about it. You will be able to tell me chapter and verse on it, and you can pick that up by talking to somebody. I think so.
Agreed?
One of the best kept secrets of documentation is to be able to use the facts and say, this particular craft has this step and this step and this step, but the really fine ones
person thoroughly understands the process. And they're taking what might be perceived as a flaw and actually turning it into positive. Why? Because they absolutely understood why it happened, right? Which brings me to the last part about documentation. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen documentation where it's very evident that they built the thing and now they're trying to create documentation to justify what they produced. Okay. Does anybody here ever have experience with that? Okay.
I'm going to use Bart.
He is watching, so he can defend himself. He is watching, so he is capable of defending himself.
He made this lovely, lovely comb. The teeth were this long. He obviously had never looked at a comb. And I talked to him about it. I'm like, dude. And he's like, boy, I did my last thing done, and this is what I did. And then I'm like, even the pictures in your documentation have longer teeth.
Just give him vibes. Just give him
You
vibes.
can't say it's just for Floki.
Oh.
And then done the paperwork afterwards.
Bart replied, ouch. Yes.
I'm gonna, alright, so, in fact, we should wrap up a couple minutes early. We got one more expound, and then I wanna give a kind of a summary.
Okay. One of the reasons why we want to continue with your documentation is I use the documentation that I have for my stuff for me when I want to go back and recreate the thing that I did. I put an item list of every single pigment I used and brand name and when I used it and the material I used. I have had to go back because I forgot how I did it. Keep a record for yourself.
And a springboard for new projects. Once you go, oh, I found something.
Really fast. So back to your original question about the person, because I think we talked a lot about like the art and documentation. If I'm dealing with a person, if I'm dealing with just a display and it's not a competition, there's no documentation, it comes back to again that enthusiasm and that passion, which is the exact same thing I look for when someone is in fighting and wants to learn more and wants to be my provost, you know, like you. I'm looking for that same thing because without that, it's a hard path. And it's that love and that passion for what they're doing that's going to carry them through.
I just wanna, I'll just say that the one thing I look for is what did you learn in doing your thing? That's all I ask. What did you learn in making whatever it was? Because you don't, even if you're making something you've done before, you learn something new. You should learn something.
Experimental archaeology. That's what we do. Don't say people, I do medieval reenactment or whatever, medieval arts and crafts or whatever. I'm an experimental archaeologist.
And practical application.
So we've only got a couple minutes left. I just want to give a quick wrap up here, and people can put their own very short 30-second thing here. But I'm hoping that kind of we talked about some of the things that what it represents as a world, and kind of what our responsibility, not job, responsibility is. And sure, there's an award called the Order of the World, but there's a responsibility as a peer in society.
I've got a really quick wrap up, something I meant to say earlier. What you do here at this event, this is the SCA. What you do in your home group with your fighter practice, that's the SCA. Is, and this could be a whole other class, so we'll just tease that. Next time we'll throw together a class on this one. Is what you say on Facebook the SCA? No, and yet. So all the qualities we just talked about, and I would say kindness is definitely one of them, but there's a lot of qualities to go into. Just remember that if you say something very inflammatory or actually punch Elias metaphorically online, such an easy target, that while you're not in an event, you can see, and that can influence whether it should or not is a great question. But kindness is a quality that follows us throughout our whole lives. It's not a mask that we can wear and take off. It's something we have to exercise all the time, that you're not actively having a migraine, and maybe even then. Yeah.
SCA should be a springboard for making you a better, more well-rounded person. If it isn't, this may not be the thing for you.
Do what you love.
I would just say if you feel like you'd like to be on the path, is really be a journey, you're really thinking about it. Ask yourself how that would change what you're doing anyway.
I'll just echo what Kelly said. Do what you love, have fun. That is the most important thing.
And do it really well. I'll say that what keeps me in the essay playing keeps me excited is I get to learn to do new things. And I fail and I learn and I get good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.